My name is Siddique Hameed. Currently I work at Dome. I contribute to various open source projects, including AngularJS. So I'm going to talk about some of the basics of AngularJS. I don't want to, it's vast, it's very comprehensive. The thing I encountered while I was learning AngularJS is some of the basics and fundamentals are very well misunderstood. Just because of your background, where you come from, what technologies you're used to, you could easily misunderstand some of those concepts, and then it can hit you pretty bad. So my focus today is to cover some of the basics, and then hopefully other session I can dig into some of the details of more advanced topics and stuff. So with that said, obviously you all might have heard what AngularJS is, and obviously the first thing that comes to your mind is it's MVC framework, right? So it's not just MVC, it has much more than that, right? So before I define what it is, I want to give some of the highlights of what the AngularJS provides. So this is something I define it this way. I don't know, I haven't seen anyone saying it this way. When I was doing some stuff on AngularJS and when I was learning it, the first thing that struck me was it's a synchronized MVC, meaning that the state of MVC are synchronized. It's reactive. It just state is propagated for me. So that's how I find it. So this is something I define it, but I don't know if anyone else thinks that way. So I call it, in a simpler term, synchronized MVC. And obviously, it's a data binding framework, just like Backbone and other things. And the best part is it's a powerful two-way. It's like the bidirectional aspect of AngularJS is it's pretty huge. I'm hoping to. I'm going to give it a tiny demo. Hopefully that convince you the power and the use of AngularJS. And then of course directives. So it's driven. At the core, it's built based on directives. Okay, I'll declare it is how you define it. So the whole framework is built off of directives. So I'll touch some of this later on other slides. But so it's a directives based. So HTML is declarative, right? So HTML, you define H1 tag, boom, your tag is bold, right? So H2 is smaller than that. So that just to give you an idea what directives are. So and then DI, dependency injection. Okay. So this is one of the things whether you love it or you hate it. So if people who come from Java background like Juice, Spring, you may know what that is, right? So what these guys have done is they try to bring in that benefits of what the DI into the JavaScript world, right? Again, it takes a while to really understand what that is, right? If you ask some Java programmer what is the DI, what is Spring, now he would say, if you build loosely coupled components, and the first thing that comes to somebody's mind would be testability. Now I'll be able to test it in isolation, but that's not what it is. It's much more than that. Just you could build dependency graphic to analyze it. You have your layers sit in one place that manages the dependency. That's basically the essence of DI. So I don't know if I can delve deeper into it, but I can just give some quick what it is, what DI is, and how DI is done in Angular. Again, I have a point there saying that, and again, this is something I've debated with a lot of my colleagues and friends. People misunderstood that what does it give other than required JS or common JS? Required JS is, if you think about it, it's a way of wiring some of the dependencies, but that's different. But it means in required JS, common JS, you have script loading, you have asynchronous script loading and other things in place. But here it's not about asynchronous script loading, it's about you getting the instance of it which is managed by a layer, which is the DI layer. So there is a difference to it. But again, if you want to use required JS or common JS, you could do that with the same AngularJS, with build on top of it. Okay. So these are essentially what they call as 3Ds of Angular, data binding, directories and dependency. The whole foundation.
The scream of like
No.
Man.
It's a game, like how quick can I get to it?
Why not you turn that on? Where's the fun in that?
How? I have no idea how to work technology. It's like I run a digital agency right now.
Right, so these are the foundations, the 3Ds, these are the foundation of what AngularJS is built on, right? So one way or the other, you do need to understand these basics to really, get the best out of AngularJS. So, and again, some of these are very confusing terms. I mean, you really need to understand some of the basics of these. Again, on top of all these three, you have HTML templating. It's like come out of box. Like you don't need to get another templating framework. I mean, it's a client side, so it's nothing more than that. But the best part is the templating works very closely with the DOM, so it would be much more, robust or simpler if you go for something else. And if you have an option, if you want to go use another templating framework. Another thing, I don't know, a lot of folks, as far as, from what I've talked to, not familiar with this one. So there is this thing called CSP. CSP is Content Security Policy. It's a W3C spec. It just basically augments the, the browser sandbox security model to another level so that you will have more control over your, securities and cross-site scripting and whatnot. So AngularJS has, as far as I know, the only framework that provides out-of-box support for CSP is Angular. I mean, there may be other custom ones, but it does it. And this is another tech buzzword these days: single-page application. SPA, whatever we call it. So single-page application are you basically have one page and you swap views and it's easy to you basically have all the reusability in terms of your DOMs and views and all that. So it provides that, but if you want to use it, you can use it. If not, that's fine. You don't have to use it. So that's single page app support. And CRUD design at the core. It's designed with CRUD and RESTful apps in mind. Meaning, they have excellent support on get all the nice HTTP verbs and whatnot, and you could they have a lot of good interceptors. You could intercept your calls, and then you can intercept all those. Then you can mash up data and whatnot. So it has a lot of those supports also. Again, the big thing is TDD focused. Okay, unlike a lot of other frameworks, that this has at least the frameworks I've used. This has at the core very strong TDD focus. The reason for that is one of the main guy, who is the core architect of this project. He comes from the testing background from Google, so he had put so much of emphasis towards it. So he does. I'll cover some of these things in detail also, but again, it is TDD focused. From top to bottom. Okay. And all the other goodies with that. So these are basically the highlights of AngularJS. So this is something I had it at the very later on my slides, but they say old habits die hard. Okay. So if you've been doing web programming like myself for a while, you realize most of the time you would spend on your time, most of the time you would be doing on, mucking with all the DOMs and, making sure your listeners work and making sure they are synchronized, whatnot. So if you're going to take the AngularJS route, the first thing that needs to come to your mind is just you got to take a step back and think outside the DOM. Okay. What I mean by that is, obviously the web application has evolved. think of, jQuery, prototype, Dojo, they have changed the whole, web app programming, completely. Without that, can't even imagine a lot of these newer technologies and stuff. They had done a very good job on how, easing the pain and working with some of these DOM quirks and their weaknesses and whatever. So, but I think it's time to move on, right? So we need to don't spend too much time on DOM code, DOM manipulation code, DOM listening code. You need to think of writing an app for application logic. So that's where these AngularJS would help you a lot. I'm not hinting or suggesting you wouldn't need to write any DOM-based code. You do need to, like for directives and stuff, but it would be very little compared to what you need if you go with pure jQuery or like Dojo or that. So this is if you want to take home a message to go with Angular, this is my strongest message. Just think outside the DOM, and then just don't spend too much time on writing DOM manipulation code. Rather, write productive code for applies or application logic and stuff. So, all right. So here's a slide I stole from Wikipedia. So basically, if you look at what MVC, MVC is, as we all know, of course, most of you might know, it's a separation of concern, right? You want to separate your layers, model layer, view layer, control layer, and you have the ability to swap certain things, whatnot. The thing is, if you read this, there's one thing that kind of hit me a little harder in a sense. It's easily said, right? I have the layers separated, but the thing is, there are a lot of transports going on right there. Meaning, you have a code. There are a lot of push and pull states, right? Your model, or don't worry about. I'm not going to worry about who is talking to who. But bottom line being, the states needs to be propagated. One state needs to know another state, and they need to carry forward a lot of things. So that is essentially what we have done with MVC so far, right? And one thing that kind of while I was doing Angular, that made me think was all this time. If you think of all the server-side technologies like Spring MVC or Struts or Rails, the MVC happened from the server side, right? But if you look at JavaScript MVC, it's on the client side, meaning that makes more sense because your client is the view, right? Your browser is the view. So to me, that sounds much more easier and straightforward rather than looking it from the other end. So I don't know. At least I felt it that way. Like all this time, the way I was, when I was doing Rails and Struts, the view was just nothing but something that pushing HTML to the browser. But that's not really my browser, right? My browser should be my view, right? My browser is the view that I'm looking at, so that should be my view. So when I'm doing the JavaScript, that struck me pretty high in the sense. This is the view. This is what I should be looking at. This is where I'm seeing the state. So that to me, at least I felt it that way. So this is how the whole traditional MVC works so far. So how it's done in Angular, basically what that means, the whole concept of two-way data binding. So what happens is your state gets reflected. Now you don't. There's different terminologies for that. So they use a model-driven view, model, whatnot. So bottom line being, you don't write any kind of extra logic or code to push or pull states or push or pull. It just gets reacts to it. If there is something on my view that needs to get to model, it just happens. It's vice versa. So that is the biggest thing that is essentially the gut of the whole Angular. That is the thing that you get out of this whole AngularJS two-way data binding. So just to quickly go over these, basically all the DOM is not the what they say is it's it transforms your DOM to a dynamic DOM, meaning that it gets reflected automatically, and then with the kind of templates compiled and whatnot, so to that. And then they do other things like linking function and all that. So those are a little more advanced topic when you start writing directives that might help you on this. But the bottom line, it's a bidirectional. It just it reacts to it. You change in model, change in loop, it's reacted. No vice versa. And just want to brush up a few key concepts. Right, as I mentioned earlier, directives. What are directives? Right, directives. If you think of HTML, why is it so popular? Because I know for a fact that some of the buddies who have no programming background can write decent HTML, right? Because it's not an imperative. JavaScript is imperative, meaning you write lines of code that goes by the logic, right? Whereas in here, you just say H1 tag, A tag, it has its meaning, it knows how to get from it. At least the basics, I'm not talking about the dynamic behavior of it, but at the core, since, I would argue that HTML is very popular because it's directive based, right? If it was to write, if you have to write like a C or C++ kind of, I don't think HTML could have been this popular in a sense. So what the directives in Angular is doing is they're kind of taking it further, and it lets you write your own vocabularies, own syntaxes, own DSL, right? So why don't we write something like that? Like, why don't I have something like a book as my DSL, which is if I'm doing some publishing domain, why don't I have something like a book? If I have some media company, why don't I have some screenshot where I can URL gets passed, and it does all the the hard stuff for me and then render it. So that's basically the directives in AngularJS would let you do that. Would let you enhance the vocabularies of HTML, enhance the static nature of HTML, and augments the way you want. So those are directives. And again, reusable. It helps you build reusable widgets, right? If I build the screenshot as a widget, I can just drop in anywhere I want. So those are the benefits you get out of the directives and stuff. And just wanted to quickly touch a few things here. So the web components group, which is going to be another W3 spec, whatnot. There is this standard Git that's getting involved, which is Polymer and all that. So those are kind of these are the precursors to it. So at some point in time, either the AngularJS evolved to a Polymer, or somehow this kind of leads away into that web components and all that concepts stuff. So the model. So in Angular, models are represented as what do you call that? The objects and properties in a JavaScript. So if you look at this example, I have a control called greetings controller. So these are attached. What gets attached to a scope, those are the models, right? So in this example, what I have is greetings. That's a model, okay? And then user is a model. So ideally, you can also kind of compose them into one thing. It's called greetings model, and then you can have all kinds of model behaviors to it and all that. So but I don't have enough slides to put all those things together. But to just quickly go over. So what gets attached to these scopes? Those are the model data. Okay, and like here in this example, it's a model function, model behavior basically. Okay, and just want to quickly show here. So what this is a view representation. So all the Angular expressions are represented within double curly braces. So in this example, what I have mentioned, greetings is basically what the value from the model that gets passed. So, and hopefully it will be more clear when we get to the demo and stuff. So view, obviously what I said before, view is what you see.
Can I just
Sure.
ask you a question about that $ scope?
Mm-hmm.
When you're setting up your models and you have $ scope out there,
Mm-hmm.
how do you prevent the different different models. So you want to take those different models. Say you got 15 different models that you want to assign to one app.
Okay.
Okay. So there are all these models are coming down onto the page. How do you make sure that scope object is not, they're not talking to each other?
Okay, just to backtrack here, scope is not a global web.
It's private. So it's private. So it's
Right.
private just to that function,
Just to this controller.
just to that controller.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Probably that helps you.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and also again, it's a lot of things are completely misunderstood. I mean, so there is no such thing as $scope at the global.
Okay.
No such thing.
So it's always when you're going double curlies, it's only going to that
Exactly.
controller, and it's only it'll go to the right controller,
Right.
and not
At that instance, at that scope.
Okay.
Right. And again, this is where the DI come in the picture, meaning these are all DI injected, dependency injected.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, I'll touch that, so please don't confuse $scope as a global state. No, it's not a global state.
Okay.
Something that may not be clear, because he's got the divs down there at the bottom. Outside of those divs, there would be another enclosing element that
Right.
could be a div,
Sure,
could be
sure.
a body tag, and that's where you specify your controller.
Right.
And that controller controls everything that happens within that element, and one of the things it gets is its own private scope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And you can have as many of those on a page as you want.
Great.
All right. So view, like I said, it's just what the process shows you, right? That's the view, and again, it's a dynamic DOM or dynamic live view, what they call it. So, and again, this is, I mean, I just kind of laid out some of the key components of it, and then point being, you don't write any DOM events to your code. Those needs to be abstracted, and then it needs to be more of an app event or model events and things like that. So that's basically the view. And controller is the guy that what he said. Controller is the guy who connects both your model and the view. Okay, and he's the guy who initializes. He's technically not the guy, but he's the guy who can. Your DI layer is the guy, but he's the guy who can initialize some of the state scope, whatnot, and stuff like that. And then he also does something called, you could get your services within your controller. This concept of services, and I'll cover it later on. So he can get those services and pass it on to your model if he needs, and then he could do things with that. So. What are services? This is again, initially when I looked at the services, to me, coming from a Java background and whatnot, server-side technology uses it for services, meaning something that runs on the server, right? But that's not it. So services in Angular means it's a reused operation or an encapsulated stuff or object. So it's not, you would think it's something that my client side is talking to server side, that's what I need services. No, it's not like that. So the services, again, I mentioned it's a borrowed phrase from server side. Java used in different forms of timer service and other things. But point being, services are not something that's running on the server alone. It's an encapsulated object, encapsulated component that can be used by the controller to do usable operations. So
would that be things like data transforms, or
it could be that. It could be sometimes it's a way of you could use for different things like data transfers. Like if you want to pass data between the controllers, or if you want to if you want, like one of the example here is $HTTP is a service. Okay, what it does is it does all the XHR. It's like $.get, async that you get from the jQuery and stuff. So all these are services. $HTTP is a service. $window is a service. A window is a service. So, but it's a wrapper around the global window object. The reason being, again, there is much the reasons to it. So what it does is, Angular, as I said before, it has a strong focus on TDD. So because of that, they want the ability to mark certain things at certain runtimes, or mutate certain things at certain contexts. So those are the things you'll be able to accomplish through the services and stuff. So again, if you as you dig more into it, then you'll come across, you'll learn all these stuff. So yeah, and timeout is nothing but set timeout, right? Set timeout is the native JavaScript way. If you want to do it in Angular, $timeout, okay? And it has, it does more than what you need than what the native set timeout does.
Is $Cube the promises library, or?
Oh, $Q is exactly, yeah. It's a promise. Yeah, it's for promise flowers. I'm glad to find it.
It's not the full Q library, but it's like, it's a limited subset of Q that gives you basic promise functionality.
Okay, they just reused the name because it's
Yeah,
recognizable.
yeah, it's based on that, but it's not, like I said, it's not complete.
Okay.
Yeah. Filters, filters again, I kind of didn't get it at the first when I saw that. So it helps. You would think it just filters some data, period, right? I mean, it's just not just filtering the data alone. It does formats the data if you want, okay? And then it does give the ability to pipe. Like, so one of the example here I do. So let's say I have the list of array of objects. I want them ordered by timestamp. I want them only 10 of them. So yada yada. You could pipe as much as you want. So it's basically a pipe-based syntax you can apply on the filters and then just change so that to get the desired output. So so routing. This is what I mentioned earlier in terms of sparse support. So what it does is, so if you have a single page, right? But you want to swap views with that. So classic example is your hybrid HTML5 based mobile web app. Now, if you think of some of those, what it does is, I mean, you could write many apps, many pages with the different views. But the classic example would be your index.html with $, question mark, your views that you want to go to. So either you want to go to your settings view or you want to go to the main view. So all that can be routed based on this routing. I mean, it doesn't have to be mobile app. It could be anything. So one of the example I mentioned here is, so when in a page, if you go to that /questions, so it's going to go to this template, and then it can take this controller, and then in another case, it needs, if you are passing in some kind of indexes, so those can be extracted, and you can extract data based on the question number or whatnot. So those are the routing AngularJS provides, and also it does these deep linking URLs, meaning it maintains the state. Like for instance, let's say I have a quiz app. I have something like question / 1, 2, whatnot. So wherever I'm routing it to, it'll maintain the state for me as I mean, either your browser back button, or if I bookmark it and then if I come back, so it will pass in and then it will maintain the whole state for you. You don't need to maintain any of those things by yourself. So that's the beauty of the routing that the AngularJS provides. And here, so folks coming from Java DI background might get it pretty easily. So why DI, right? So let's say, for instance, we have a function called driver, and he has to drive a car, right? And then we have another function called car, and its job is to drive, move, or whatever we call it. So in this case, so your driver depends on the car. So how we can structure it in a way how a car can be drawn, right? So there are, from Angular philosophy, what they say is there are 3 ways a driver can drive the car. Meaning the first option would be like you have a drive car implementation wherein you create an instance of the car and then you drive it. That's number 1. Obviously, a lot of people might agree that you're newing it, right? You're right there newing it. I mean, it can be something else, right? So that cannot be controlled. You'll have a change in implementation. So the other option would be like a global state. A car can be a global, and then within your drive car, you just call the method right there, right? So that's a global state that you're sharing across, and you have a lot of bad implications and stuff. And this is the Angular, or any DI usage would agree upon, would be passing in the dependency you need, which in this case, you're passing in your car, and then his job is to drive, that's it, right? And all the heavyweight or all the dependency the car needs to be managed outside, right? A car may need engine, a car may need, whatever, like, solar or whatnot. So those needs to be managed outside the driving the car. So that is where the DI come in the picture. Like all the dependency that's needed for your car is managed outside. And what the drive car should do is it gets the dependency and does what it needs to. That's basically the essence of DI. And this is how the DI is implemented in AngularJS. So I mentioned earlier, so TDD in Angular, so what are the things that it provides for the TDD folks, TDD lovers? So one of the things that I at least keep hearing all the time, I don't write tests for my client side because I'm dealing with DOM, I'm dealing with window, I'm dealing with document object and whatnot. I don't know how to write this code. So, but there's no excuse if you're going with Angular. So it gives you lots and lots of mock classes and runtime behavioral changes for your global object. So with including all this asynchronous and whatnot. So it comes with the full package. Okay, if you want to go with QUnit, or if you want to go with any other external testing framework, you could do. But what I'm trying to say is it comes with supplied with a lot of these mount classes and harness classes that you can leverage upon. And then so it does both very strong emphasis on both the unit testing and also the end-to-end testing. When I say end-to-end testing, it means it literally you can log into your page and it literally go through events like clicking on the button, waiting for the data to come back from so you can literally trigger all those events, and then you can capture the results and whatnot within this what they call a scenario in AngularJS. So and it's based on a framework called Karma, and it was previously formerly called Testacular. It does have a lot more neat things like JavaScript test code coverage and Istanbul, based on Istanbul, and obviously you could run that end-to-end testing on multi-browsers if you want, like either Chrome, Firefox, whatnot, capture results. So those are things you can get out of Angular. So that's what I mean. A lot of times when I hear when they call it a structured web framework. What is a structured web framework? A structured web framework means it needs to have all the bells and whistles or all the whole package to it. It's not just a simple library you drop in. No, it needs to have all these support. Otherwise, going with that is not going to do any good for me. So these are the support that Angular provides out of box. So. All right, so this is a question. I'm sure it's all good. Of course, I've talked about some of the good things of Angular. Obviously, nothing is going to be perfect, right? So some of the things, obviously, another framework, another thing to learn. It's a very bad steeping learning curve. A lot of things to suck in. One of the main things with going towards Angular is declarative or directive style. So it may not be your cup of coffee actually, meaning the reason being, we programmers come from a background wherein when you say debugging code, meaning you go line by line of code, right? That's what we call debugging, right? Like you see this. But when it comes to this declarative framework, you drop in a directive, it does a whole bunch of things, you can call it gray magic, black magic, whatever you call it, and boom, it works. It's good as long as it works. It's bad You don't know where to start, right? I mean, if it doesn't work, you don't know where to start. That's where the whole problem is, right? So I can give an example. Like HTML is good, great, popular, whatever. I mean, it was a declarative, right? So, but the thing is, the same thing that, I mean, if you look into the XSL and XQuery, they failed miserably because those are also declarative. But unfortunately, there are so many things that happens behind the scene. There's so many things you need to really understand each contextual differences, how it gets applied. It's not easy to wrap around. So that's, I mean, I can think of an example aside. So declarative is hard to get adjusted. I mean, if you get adjusted, if you know I mean, it's pretty good in showing some of the errors and whatnot. So far I've seen. And then the documentation is not as good as it's supposed to, but again, we as a community improving as much as we can. But it's a very active community. I mean, if you Google certain things, you get results in Stack Overflow and a lot of other places pretty easily. And another one I want to touch upon is it doesn't come with any UI widgets or skins or styling. I mean, if you go for Ember.js and if you go for the EXE, the other frameworks, you are Senchan, although you get some UI widgets out of box, but the thing is, don't expect all the UI components out of box. It doesn't give you all that, which is good in a way because it doesn't deal with it, but it works very well with a lot of the UI frameworks that's currently available. And Twitter Bootstrap is a great combo with Angular and all that. So the last point I'm pointed out, watch for variables and method. So one example I just noticed, when you say dollar, it suddenly comes up, oh, what is it? I mean, it uses dollar variable, but like I said, they are not global. I mean, but just keep that in mind. But when you're using it, it's not going to. I mean, so far what I've done, it didn't have any conflicts. But again, it can tick you off when you see it, right away. So some of the things it may not be very well suited for, like game development. Don't do it. It's an MVC binding, whatnot. You go for D3JS or something. I mean, you can go for other things. Game development is strong pixel manipulation, DOM stuff. So, and if you want to do some of those, you could use Angular, which is on top. I mean, you could use them on top of Angular if you really need to. But again, if you're doing something solely on pixel-based operation, then Angular is not going to give you a whole lot. So that's and visualization. It doesn't give you much, but if you involve a lot of the data binding within your app, then you can use it. If not, then don't use it. So that's basically the whole. Okay, let's start looking at the code, and that should. All right, let's see. Can you see? So what I have here is I have script tag. Basically, I get the Angular min from their CDN. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm running it on my local node server. You don't need to, but I just have few things, XHR call, so that's why I'm running on a node server. So what I'm going to just go this page. It's all blank. There's nothing in there because I don't have anything. So and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create. This is what I mentioned earlier. The curly braces are Angular expressions, right? So what's going to happen here is it doesn't do anything because I didn't ask it to do anything. I didn't, So if I need to make it angularized, so what I need to do is I need to add a directive called ng-app. So this is the directive that I need to supply to my page, saying that hey, I want this page to be angularized. So let's go here. This one is 2. Okay. 2 didn't give much. There's nothing you could do with 2, right? So just to touch upon the isolation here, I just wanted to quickly give a understanding of how this isolation works within Angular is. So let's say I have a page where I want certain part of my page to be angularized and certain part not. I don't want that to be conflicting, right? So what I can do something like this. So I can just say, I don't want my whole page to be angularized, so I just want only a certain piece of it. So in this example, I had one div, you could have things underneath, right? So that needs to be angularized and the other ones don't do anything for me. So that's what I did. So what it did was the top div needs to be angularized, the rest of them, it's not going to touch anything till that. So again, we cannot do much with the 1+1. Let's start writing some controllers and see what it's going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's see. I'm going to create a model. Okay. So ng model is a directive that says I want to create a model attribute or object within this. So I'm going to create so that model attribute is called, let me give a controller to this. I don't technically need if I need only one, but I'm going to give one. So yeah, so you'll see. So what I have is a input object, input type text. So where the value, what it takes in is a greetings as a model attribute, and I also had it represented in another place with the curly brace, which is an Angular expression. So what's going to happen is, so basically what it's doing is, whatever the change that happens to my model gets reflected on the view. I didn't write any listener, any key listeners, anything at all. It just gets reflected. It's going to get reflected anywhere else. I could have it in any other place. So any change that would get reflected for me. So here, so wherever it's been, called, it's going to render for you. So that's good. So at one level, right? So let's say I want to do a little more than that, right? So let's say I want to have some kind of a model behavior, meaning model methods, right? So I want to say something called so I want to do something with that. Let's say so this is where I'm going to write some controller code. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a controller for that scope, for that div scope that it's wrapped upon. So again, the directory to use is ng controller. So I'm going to say so as I showed in one of the slides, so basically the scope is going to be injected to this controller. So I also want to kind of initialize a state for it. So I'm going to say hello, then that, and then I want to do something like I do need to have a capitalized greetings, right? So I want to do something like is a model method. Okay.
So you got a misspelling.
Thank you. So I can say something like get some from a cheat sheet if I have. Let's, I'm gonna swipe it from my. Okay, so if you look at it, what it's doing, it's just kind of splitting the array and then basically capitalizing the whole sentence for me, right? So what I want to do is I want it to be capitalized on a change of this model data, right? So have an attribute called, directory called ng change. So, okay. So let's go back here. Okay. What's happening here is, so I have that get relayed from my model, and here is it needs to get capitalized. So that's the model model method, as you call it. And so that's good. And then let's say if I want to do a little more like an asynchronous call or something, what I want to do here is I want to do something like I have a node server running where I can call a function called translate. So basically what it does is, it's behind the scene it's calling the Google Translate, wherein you can pass in your source language and the target language and pass in the text that you want to translate. So basically I'm going to use this /translate within this code so that it's going to happen for me from this controller. So let me go back to my cheat sheet and see if I can, right here. So here if you look at it, so what I'm doing is I'm using this $HTTP as I mentioned. This is the service, that Angular service that you can use to invoke server call, right? So here obviously it needs to be injected. So I get the $HTTP injected. So what I'm doing here is the /translate is where I'm, where it's going to call. And for now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to hard code the target language. Okay, so let's go with Spanish, and that should be it. So
Who feeds HTTP to the controller?
that's the DI layer.
I know, but I mean, does it look?
I think it probably matches the name.
Yeah,
So it looks like the parameters.
I get to that. That's where the DI annotation, name-based annotation come in. I'll get to that, good question,
Okay.
yeah. So what I want to do here is I want to translate the greeting that I pass in, and I want that to be rendered to my view, right? So I have a module method called translate, which is making an asynchronous call to my /translate, and then it gets the response, and then it's going to set the value to my scope thing called translated greetings, right? So I want this to be called from here. Let's see. And so copy this. So hopefully that should be it. Let's see. Hold on. So basically it did it for me right there, right? Okay, so before I get more into it, I wanted to touch upon the name-based annotation you brought up. Before I get deep into it, I just wanted to talk about the scope isolation here, right? So we talked about the scope before. So let's say, okay, in here, so you can have any number of, you can reuse the controller any number of times. It's all going to build a scope on its own for that instance, for that hierarchy. So I just wanted to kind of isolate this in a way that it would be visible. So okay, so I'll give something else for the other one. So let's see what happens. So these two are completely different scopes, okay? So the other one didn't. So that's the scope isolation. You get the scope isolation to your controller, okay? Yeah. So let's. I mean, you could. I could go on with other things like. There's one more thing I wanted to point out here is. So here I have this ng change, right? So what I'm saying there is any change in my greetings, do this for me, right? So you could either do it this way, or you could do it in a more, elegant way. Meaning, there is this concept of watching a scope, watching of changes to a scope. So I could do something like this. Let's remove this. I don't want it to be controlled here. I want it to be controlled right from my controller. Okay. So what I would do in that case is scope dot watch, and then I can say see if I have it. Yeah. So let me do it from here. Okay. So what it's doing here is within, watch my scope for changes to greetings and target language. That's it. So any changes to those, it would automatically be, it would kick out these methods for me. That's basically watching and do this model behavior. Call this model method. So I don't need to declare it. I don't need to call it from here. If you want, you can do it. But the better way to do is to do it from the controller. So
does the plus represent logical OR there?
Yes, there is much more to the plus here. This is you could basically watch. I don't want to go deeper into it, but I just wanted to quickly say that in a way it's a change in these expression values. So what you see inside here is not technically a JavaScript statement. It is an Angular expression. So in this context, it's just saying changes to my attributes or greetings and target language. That's it. So let me just to avoid confusion. Let's see. Okay. So one more thing I wanted to touch upon. This is to me, when I saw this kind of, one of the point that made me really go with, like this framework a lot. Is my developer tools. Did it go?
Command Option J.
Yeah. Well, looks like it's. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So. Okay. Alright, so what I want to do here is, when I said to bidirectional, what we saw was, see a model directed in the view, right? And then there's one more, let's add one more thing, that would be a view to model. So, which in this case would be my change in my language, right? So here I'm going to add So doesn't matter what I change. So what's happening here is, so this is my model state, and that gets reflected here, okay? And here is my view that gets reflected back to my model, meaning, so that is the bidirectionality of this framework, right? So I didn't write anything. What I did in this case was here. So I said, this is also my model, right? This target language is what we initialized to Spanish earlier. So that's the bidirectionality of this in AngularJS. So I didn't write any extra code to populate it. I can just go around, so it just gets reflected, right? So I want to take this a little further than that, right? What I want to do is I want to do it completely outside of the Angular runtime. So which is right from here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do, let me get the, okay, so I got the div which is enclosed by the controller, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something like, okay, yeah, Angular is the global object. I mean, that's the only global thing that you need to worry about, okay? So I'm going to say something like, okay, I need to get the element of this div, which is here, okay? And then what I want to do is I need to get its scope, okay? Which is, we already have that created for us. What I'm going to do is I wanted to do, this is the Angular's API. So what I want to do is I wanted to apply something here, meaning I wanted to change something, okay? Okay. So what I did here is I changed I was able to do it. I was able to change the scope. I was able to change the model state completely outside the scope of Angular. And the beauty of what happened within that is everything that needs to be reflected got reflected. So this is essentially what you do when you want to completely heterogeneous, like Angular and jQuery, Angular and Dojo needs to connect, talk to each other. This is the way they do. So to me, this is a big deal. In the sense, it's not that I need to set this value here, I need to set that value there, I need to change my key state over here, I need to change my models like this selection listener, unchanged listener. No, it all done for me. All I care. If you look at this code, all I did was just the greetings. What I want to do with the greetings. I didn't do anything in terms of DOM. I didn't do anything to do with the keywords, binding, nothing at all. So I did. This is my business logic. Period. So I did it from. So that's.
So you're talking to it above the browser engine.
Yeah, if you think about it, yes.
Right?
If you want it, yeah, if you think about it, yes. Yeah, because this is a runtime outside your Angular, right? I mean, this is completely outside. So I want to pass in and like just the model state. That's what I did here, and then it just gets propagated from me. I didn't change anything at all. I mean, just changing the greetings would do. If I need to change the target language, the same thing. So.
I think the takeaway here is that Angular is providing enough surface area on the different aspects of the framework so that you can use the browser console like a REPL and make runtime changes and experiment and do inline tests and things like that.
I mean, this is kind of, this is not the use case, obviously. I mean, you console is, but again, for debugging, or to me, what I wanted to highlight here is your AngularJS, all the binding works in itself. So if another framework that needs to talk to this, all it needs to do is just set the state through it, and internally it's going to do all the state changes or propagation. It's going to do it for you. So any question on this one? This to me is it's a big thing. If you get this part, I mean you you crossed 50% of Angular, in the sense that bidirectionality, and then how the scope is represented. And the same thing I could do with multiple scopes the same way I did on here. So, you have any question on that one? Then, I mean, if you get this one, that you pretty much got it in this demo, the bidirectionality.
Anybody have any particular questions
From
from
this one. Okay. So, let's see, what else I got? I mean, other than that, so I wanted to,
Hey, Siddique, we may need to wrap up.
okay, sure. Okay, so basically what, let's see. Okay, so I have. If you want to know more or not, I'm going to post this slide onto the to our Meetup comment. So there are a few things if you want to really know. I mean, some of the things I wanted to just touch upon. This is one of my directive, Angular-based directive, timer directive, and this has been got a pretty good response from the community. So basically what it does is it's just a tiny timer thingy. So if you just drop in this timer, and then it's just going to kick off, and you can stop, start, whatnot, and it has all this commenting structure. I mean, templating, like you can pass in some templates like this, and it's going to change and whatnot. So
That's awesome.
yeah, and then I in fact used it with the progress bar and stuff. So there's a countdown capability, and there is also this auto starting. You can turn it on with the auto start pause, and the markup is pretty simple. It's done, and there are attributes to it. Optional attributes you can pass in, and that's about it. This is one of my the recent ones, and then there is this extension called Wikipedia Chrome extension. I have. So basically, this is all built on Angular and Bootstrap. Okay, so you could just scroll through the Wikipedia feeds and stuff. I mean, if you look at the code, it's just really less. Compared to if I'd used Dojo prototype or something, that'd be much more involved than whatever.
Because the declarative layer is taking care of so much.
Exactly. So that's So I mean, feel free to poke around, So that's basically it.
You have a question here?
What's the performance like when you do like hundreds of data binding?
Right.
Where does it start?
Good question. So performance, I had the same thought when I was doing it. Overall, I mean, they have, just since you asked that question, I wanted to touch upon one thing here. They have this extension, Chrome extension for AngularJS. So that gives you all the performance metrics you like. Okay. Overall, I mean, what I've noticed in this specific page, I have like timers, at least 5 or 10 of them running, some on the background and whatnot. I didn't see big difference, lot of performance bottlenecks or anything. I mean, there are other places too. I'm just giving an example. There are so many timer events getting kicked off. So what it does is it does this compile phase for all the directives. It does this compile phase. So that's pretty smart in terms of what needs to compile and what needs to take into effect. So the only thing you would kind of it takes time is the compile time. That's about it. And once it gets compiled, it has the right attributes and scopes that needs to work with. So overall, at least I haven't seen much of the performance lag. No. So,
Is there another hand up? Sorry, Chris. Someone has a question? All right.
all right,
Siddique,
cool.
Thank you very much.